Welcome to Family History Mysteries, a podcast that tells the stories uncovered through family history research, the unexpected stories of everyday people. I am an avid family historian who has been compiling my family tree for over 15 years, with nearly 20,000 people recorded in my trees.
And please put a review on my podcast. That will certainly help in getting the word out there and creating more listenership. Episode 207, The Amazing Will Case. Part 2. On the 1st of April 1911 in the Perth Truth, Curly Kate Tipper, A Curious Will Case, Catherine Moore's Strange History, Man in Search of His Mother, A Peep into the Past, Did You Forget Husband and Children? Interesting Letters and Remarkable Evidence, Alleged Visions, Hypnotism, Lovers and Delusions. Mrs. Moore made a will on November the 8th, 1910 and died on November the 10th, 1910. The objection lodged against the will was imbecility since 1907 and undue influence. The value of the property was under £1,000 and consisted of 4 cottages in Elizabeth Street, Richmond, and one in Rowena Parade. By the will, her jewellery, valued at £6, was left to Marion Jones, the wife of one of the executors, and a cottage and 10 shillings per week for the housekeeper, Agnes Bishop, if she left the service of her husband. The coveter was Thomas George Tipper, and he came into the matter in this way. It seems that Mrs. Moore had a history which she kept to herself, and about which she never allowed her husband to know anything. It appeared that Mrs. Moore was married in 1865 and had 3 children by that marriage. She cut herself adrift from them later on, and right up to the time of her death refused to acknowledge them. In 1881 she was living at 52 Elizabeth Street, Richmond, and went through a marriage ceremony with John Carradus, with whom she lived until his death in 1902. When he died, he left her a life interest in his property. Agnes Bishop then went to live with her as a housekeeper, and they lived together for 4 years. On September the 18th, 1907, she married Francis Norton Moore. He was not sure, but they had good reason to believe that Thomas Tipper, her first husband, was still alive then. On the 4th of December 1910, shortly after going through marriage with Moore, a letter was received from Tipper as follows. Picton, the 4th of December 1907. My dear mother, I have been informed that you are still in the land of the living in Richmond and that your family is going to law with you. I saw Harry Tipper in Sydney yesterday, and he told me he was going to take proceedings against you, and also that they're going together to make inquiries about your marriage. They want me to take steps with them, but no, I will do you no harm to hurt you, but I will honour you as a mother, although I've never seen you for the last 30 years. It is not my fault I have not seen you. You will think it's curious in hearing from me after so long, but I heard about your troubles and I thought I would write and let you know. I believe I am your son, by what they say and by the register of births. I hope you will not be offended at me in any way, as I am only too pleased that you are in the land of the living, and may God bless and protect you for many a year. I would like to see you, if only to see your face once more, so as to think of your visits to Sunbury when I was a boy. I hope you will get over all the trouble which they say they are going to put you in. I think they ought to protect you instead of trying to disgrace you when you are their mother. So goodbye, and God bless you, my dear mother. I remain your affectionate son, Thomas Tipper, Picton, New South Wales. To this letter, she replied indicating that she never had any children, that it was a case of mistaken identity, and the gentleman who, in his letter, stated he was horrified at the threat of his brothers to disgrace his mother, then wrote as follows. Redfern, 8th of April 1908. To Mr. Moore. Dear Sir, I am to inform you that you are illegally married to Mrs. Tipper, whose husband is still living, and that I am her eldest son, and there are 2 other sons, Harry and William. I am informed that when you were getting married, you were asked by Reverend Father Murphy, did you know who you were marrying? And you said yes, when you did not know. Now I am to inform you that she is the wife of T. Tipper, and I want an explanation from you at once why you are not stopping with her, meaning my mother. If I do not get an answer, I will put it in the hands of the police, as it is a case of bigamy. You were informed by the age that your marriage was illegal. I will come over with my brother and show you who we are. They tell me you are an ex-policeman, so you ought to know the laws of the country without asking the newspaper. You were also informed by Mr. O'Neill that there were 3 sons belonging to her living. I have written to her, and she returned my letter back to me. I also sent a registered one to her on December the 5th. I am also informed that other people told you about her husband. I wrote to my mother in a quiet way, but she ignored me. So I mean to see about it and show her and you that we are her sons, and then I will take steps if she insists that we are not hers by birth. So I advise you to see her and make it known what I intend doing at once. It is hard for me to do such a thing, but I must declare everything that has been thrown at us by others. I will give you a week to consider. If you don't agree, I will take it to the law department and have it investigated. I remain yours respectfully, T.G. Tipper. Mr. MacArthur said that no notice was taken of that letter, and Tipper evidently heard that there was some property about. His next letter reads as follows. 31st of August, 1908, number 9 Edward Street, Redfern. My dear mother, I am taking the liberty to write you this letter, hoping it will meet with your approval with me writing to you as a mother from a son whom I am by marriage. I am your eldest son, and I trust you will acknowledge me as so, as I am cast on the world as an outcast, which is no fault of mine. I have never done anything that you or my father should earn and disown me. I am poor and a cripple through an accident, and I do not know what I am to do, as I cannot go to work now, and you as a mother, who have full and plenty, will not assist me, but you turn your back and disown me. But if there is a God above us, whom we both have to meet him sooner or later, this will bring us both together, and then there will be no denying one another. I am sorry that you, my mother, should turn against your own flesh and blood for the sake of others, and call us thieves and impostors, which I never was, and I bear the character which is no disgrace to mankind. The Lord said, Honour thy father and mother, but we have not had the chance the same as others. I am sorry to think that I have a mother that will do so, but God Almighty will judge it sooner or later, and I hope I will see you before he does call us apart on this earth, with his blessings bestowed on us both. I hope you will write as a true mother should. I am sorry for what has transpired of late, but I trust it will be cast aside and be forgotten with the love of a mother to her son, and with the grace of God, I hope we will meet soon on this earth before we are parted to meet before our God. I must conclude this letter with my best love to you, dear mother. I remain your loving and affectionate son, George Thomas Tipper. On Saturday, November the 5th, Mrs. Moore took ill, and on the next day, Dr. Spowers was called in and advised an operation, but she refused emphatically to be cut up. Dr. Haynes was called in on a consultation, and he was of the opinion that an operation was necessary, but she once again refused. On November the 8th, she sent for her solicitor and made her will. On the 9th of November, she relapsed into a condition of unconsciousness and died the following day. Arthur Emmett Ryan, clerk to Mr. Maloney's solicitor, said he drew out the will on the 8th of November 1910. She answered all the questions put to her in a perfectly rational manner. She said she wished all her property to be left to her husband, with the exception of 10 shillings a week to Agnes Bishop, the housekeeper, a cottage to live in, and her jewellery to Mrs. Marion Jones, a neighbour who had been kind to her. Dr. Spowers said that when he called in to see Mrs. Moore on the 6th of November, she was capable mentally of transacting business, when he saw her on the 7th of November. On how many occasions did you attend to Mrs. Moore for hysteria? And he said on 2 occasions. What form did the hysteria take? He said on 1 occasion she'd lost her voice. Was that a delusion? He said yes, it was. Isn't hysteria, as a matter of fact, something to do with the mental condition of a person? And he said yes. Then the mental balance of a person suffering from hysteria is not all that it should be. And he said no. Did you ever form the view that Mrs. Moore was cranky? He said no. Assuming what you were told, as a matter of fact, that a woman of 65 years of age was under the impression that she was enceinte, had engaged a doctor and a nurse, and was making clothes for the expected baby, what would you say? He said, I would say it was absurd. Assuming that a woman was married some years before and had 3 children, and laboured under the delusion that she'd never had children, would that not show that her mental balance was affected? And he said, I would say that she was mad. No person could have had children and forgotten the fact? He said no. No person could have had 3 children and forgotten the fact without mental balance being affected? He said no. What about the cases that have occurred of people losing their memory altogether? They are not insane, are they? He said no. Would you regard a woman of 65 that thought and said that she had a miscarriage as being mentally afflicted? And he said yes. His Honour also added, though, or she might be lying. Dr. James M.S. said that he was called in to see the testatrix on the 8th of November. She appeared to be perfectly rational. He told her there was only a chance of recovery that lay in an operation. She shook her head and said no. The following day he saw her twice, and on the last occasion she was sinking but conscious and appeared to understand what he said to her. Reverend John Joseph King, the Roman Catholic priest that spiritually attended Mrs. Moore on the 6th of November, said that she answered his questions coherently, and from her general bearing he considered her to be mentally capable. Francis Norton Moore, retired constable of police, said he knew the Testatrix for 3 months before his marriage to her. He lived with her up to the time of her death and found her to be a shrewd businesswoman. He gave her £10 a month. The cavator wrote to him on the 4th of December making allegations against his wife, which she denied. She also denied all knowledge of the tippers. One of them called on him in 1909, and during a quarrel, the witness put him out. He had known his wife to suffer from hysteria, but never noticed anything wrong with her mentally. He was asked, "Before you married, did you hear of any other suitors for her hand?" He said no. Did she ever speak of a man named Hartley? He said not till we were married. Did she speak of other men? Casham, Kingston, Chesterman and Reed? No, Casham and Reed were boarders in the house when I married her. Did she not say that these men wished to marry her? He said no. What age do you think she was when you married her? He said between 50 and 55. Had she told you on what terms she was with Caritas? She told me he was her husband. Do you know what the word spinster means? He said yes, a woman who's never been married. Well, how do you account for your wife being described in this certificate as a spinster? She told me she'd been married to Caritas, but the clergyman had neglected to register the marriage. Did she say that the marriage took place in Gippsland and that she was 12 years of age at the time? Yes, she said she was married there, but did not mention her age. When you received the letter from Tipper, why did you not take steps to find out about her former marriage? I believed her when she denied the whole story. What was the meaning of that reference to the age in that letter? I don't know. I never wrote to the Age or any other paper. Did your wife ever tell you she was enceinte? Yes, she saw Dr. Morton and he told her it was a mistake. According to the certificate of her marriage with Tipper, she was 65. Did you know that? He said, I have been told so. Did it not strike you as ridiculous, whether her age was 55 or 65, that she should be in that condition? He said, I believed her when she told me. Did your wife visit fortune tellers? He said, yes. Agnes Bishop said she had been in the service of the Testatrix since 1903 and found her a shrewd businesswoman, fair and just to everybody. Mr. Cohen said, did she ever tell you anything about men? She once told me that 2 men had hypnotised her. After her marriage with Moore, did anything occur? She thought she was going to have a child and engaged a nurse and a doctor. She made baby clothes. She was also afraid of people poisoning her, and she said she had a vision of John Caritas. Reverend J. Murphy, Roman Catholic priest, said he'd known the Testatrix for 12 years. She was a good Catholic, and before her marriage with Moore, she told him that a man named Tipper claimed to be her son, but she never had a child. He believed her. He married her to Moore, but before doing so questioned her as to whether she had been previously married. She was firm in her denial and said that she wished to be married as a spinster. He knew her as Mrs. Caritas and spoke to her about it. She said she'd never been married to Caritas and swore on oath that she'd never been married before. The certificate of her marriage to Moore gave her age as 48, though she looked 60. She was a good businesswoman and would, in his opinion, have made a good state treasurer. He was asked, was she eccentric? Yes, in her dress, she had a great flow of language. He was asked, was there a tinge of madness in her eccentricity? And he said, I would not say that, but she had a habit, when you were talking to her about subjects, of flying off on a tangent on another. Mr. Cohen, in opening the case, said, Catherine Chadwick was married in 1865 to Thomas Tipper, who was a cab driver. There were 3 sons. In 1871, the lady was living with John Caritas at Richmond and known as Curly Kate Tipper. On another occasion, she summoned a person for calling her that name and then admitted that her husband Tipper was alive. She lived with Caritas and was known as Mrs. Caritas for 27 years until he died. She suffered from hysteria and delusions. One delusion was that people were trying to poison her and Caritas. Another was that spirits visited her at night and advised her what course to follow in her affairs on life. She had delusions that the sign of the cross was appearing on the ceiling of her bedroom every night. She also believed that the property that was bestowed from Caritas was from another male admirer. She also believed that all her suitors appeared in a procession before the Virgin Mary, who indicated to her whom she should marry, and the lucky man turned out to be More. She was also under the impression that she was entitled to £1,000,000 that was in the chancery, and even went as far as to offer a certain portion to people when she got it. She said she'd lived to 100 years, and without the slightest warrant claimed a relationship with Sir Rupert Clarke and Lord Hopetoun. Elizabeth Henderson said she knew Mrs. Tipper as Lizzie Chadwick, and she said she used to do the block with a handsome woman named Margaret Ingham. And the Honour asked what block. Mr. Cohen said, "Do you mean the block in Richmond or Collins Street?" And the witness disgustedly said, "Oh, sure, there was nothing in Richmond in those days to suit them." "By what name did you know her?" She said she was known far and wide as Curly Kate Tipper. The young Tippers played with the witness's children for years, but despite this, the testatrix had of late years emphatically denied that she'd ever been married or ever had a child. The witness said that she replied to her, "May you be forgiven for a great fibber." Catherine Elizabeth Carradis said that the testatrix was always full of stories of men who wanted to marry her, and attributed the suicide of a lawyer's clerk named Wiggins to her refusal becoming his wife. "Did she ever say anything to you about the spirit of John Carradis?" She said yes, he used to visit her, and also she was entitled to £1,000,000 in chancery. "Do you remember any conversation you had with Mrs. Moore prior to her marriage?" "Yes, she asked me to allow my daughter to be a bridesmaid, and I said I would on the condition that she was married in her own name. She said her right name was Carradis, and that she was married to him when she was 12 years old in Gippsland, and that she'd ridden 12 miles to the church. She then added that Carradis left her the following day and that she did not see him for 12 months. She then traced him and he took her to his home in Richmond. I then told her to be careful and get married in her right name." "Did you know a solicitor's clerk named Wiggins?" She said yes. "Was there anything between Mrs. Moore and Wiggins?" "Yes, he seemed to have a lot of influence over her and she was afraid of him." "How do you know that?" "On one occasion she hid under a bed for 3/4 of an hour while he was in the house." "Did you ever see her do anything else out of the ordinary?" "Yes, she danced an Irish jig around the table in front of Mr. Wiggins to show how young she was." "What about her visits to the fortune tellers?" "I think any woman who spends her money on fortune tellers must be mad." "Well, what about these visions you say Mrs. Moore had?" "You, of course, never had visions or nightmares." "No, I sleep when I go to bed. I have 12 children to look after and no time for rubbish." His Honour asked, "Did you believe her when she told you she was married when she was 12 years of age?" She said, "No, I told her I did not." She replied, "The girls coming from Ireland looked older than they were." Maria Griffin, widow, said she'd known Mrs. Moore for 34 years. She mentioned to the witness that the vision of John Carradis used to come to her bedside. On one occasion at St Kilda, whilst walking along the esplanade, she made a run and went to make a jump over the wall. The witness had to stop her. She told the witness she had twins when she was 16. Mr. Cohen asked, "Do you remember her being in the family way?" And she said, "Yes, I remember her being in a certain condition." John William Allen said he was the nephew of the testatrix, whom he'd known for 35 years. She used to take hysterical fits. He did not get along with her very well. She thought he was after her property. "Did she ever visit you at your place at Wonga Park?" He said, "Yes, on several occasions." "What conversations did you have with her?" "Oh, she told me that she was going to marry a man with plenty of money. She said she'd been to the fortune tellers where she had been told she was going to live for 100 years. "Did she explain about the millions?" She said, "Yes, she told me the 2 uncles had gone to Chicago many years ago, had amassed millions of money and had died interstate. The money was, she said, in chancery. I said it was a lot of rot. She had hallucinations about her money and thought people were trying to poison her to get her property. On one occasion she came to Wonga Park. She stood outside the house and cursed and swore like a trooper." "Are you aware that your mother applied to Mrs. Moore for a loan of money?" He said, "Not that I'm aware of." "Did your aunt ever say anything to you about the Tippers?" "She told me in 1876 she married a man named Tipper who'd fallen overboard on a voyage to Calcutta with horses. She also said she had 3 or 4 children who'd been taken away from her by their father's relatives." "Did you ask her about them?" "No, but after Carradis's death, she told me some men by the name of Tipper had called on her claiming to be her sons. She denied that they were, stating she'd never had any children." "Did you not tell her that she'd admitted to you years before she had children?" "No." Dr. O'Sullivan said that he had been called on to attend the test asterisks. He described her as a highly strung, hysterical woman. He was asked, would it affect her powers of discrimination as between persons who might be expected to share her property? And he said yes. William Charles Carrodus was asked, did you hear of her visiting fortune tellers? He said yes, but I would not tolerate her speaking to me. Did you hear anything about an attempt being made to hypnotise her? He said yes, I received a wire to come and see her as she was ill. I found her in bed and she'd apparently lost the power of speech. The girl who was attending her told me that some man had brought a crystal into which they got her to look until she was hypnotised with the object of robbing her of her property. I took no notice. He was asked, do you regard her as a peculiar woman? And he said yes, very. She has a bad and violent temper. Thomas George Tipper, a farm manager residing at Inglewood, said that when a child he was committed to the neglected children's department and remembered being visited by a man and a woman at the schools. Mr. Cohen asked, did you see the late Mrs. Moore before her death? He said yes. Do you recollect if she resembled the woman who visited you at the schools? He said yes. What age are you? He said, I'll be 45 at the end of May. How long have you been earning your living? He said, since I was 15. During the whole of 30 years since then, have you ever made any inquiries as to where your mother was? He said, yes, when I came to Melbourne from Talbot when I was 19. From whom? From my aunt, my father's sister. Did you make inquiries after that? On 2 occasions on my return from South Africa in 1902. Did your aunt tell you where your mother was? She told me my mother would not recognise me, but she lived in Elizabeth Street, Richmond. And for years, although you knew where she lived, you made no effort until 1907 to make yourself known to her. I was told it was not earthly use doing so, as she would not recognise us. When did you first hear she was living with John Carrodus? I did not know that until after Moore married her. Who told you that Carrodus was dead? Thomas O'Neill. Did O'Neill tell you that Carrodus had left her any properties? He told me she had been left a life interest in some property. Who told you she had other property? My brother Harry. In that letter on the 4th of December 1907, you say they are going to take proceedings against you. What did you mean? I met Harry in Sydney and he told me he'd called on her and that she called him a blackguard, a blackmailer and a rogue and a thief. He told me he was going to take proceedings to clear his character. George Thomas Tipper then wrote a further letter to his mother. Number 9 Edward Street, Redfern, 10th of June 1908. My dear mother, I am writing to you to let you know what I am intending to do in the matter concerning your false statements in the marriage with Moore and yourself. My mother, the mother of 3 boys, whom no one needs to be ashamed of in the wide world, both in character and appearance, and still you as a mother despise your own flesh and blood, which no beast of the field do to their young. Therefore, I'm going to lay an information against you in the matter with the marriage certificate, and also a prosecution against you for libelling my character and also my brother. I will make you prove your statement which you sent me in writing when I sent you my portrait. I am very sorry that I have to do such a thing to my mother, but others are before her own offspring, which have never been known before in the British history or amongst the blacks of South Africa. Therefore, I'm letting you know all about it, as it is my duty to do so as a son, that you can consider over it before I take the step. You can let Mr. Thomas O'Neill know before I come over, as I am going to see him before I go to the police department, and I informed Detective Howard about the matter when I was in Melbourne last week. We are determined to have our characters upheld. I hope you consider the matter before I take the painful steps into the courts. With my best wishes and love for a mother, I hope you will do so. I remain your affectionate son, if I'm allowed to be, George Thomas Tipper. His Honour asked, when did your father die? And in surprise he responded, he's not dead, but we can't find him. On the 16th of September 1911, in the Sydney Daily Telegraph, it stated that Thomas Tipper, son of the testatrix by a former marriage, grounds being testamentary incapacity and undue influence on part of her husband, that Thomas appealed the decision. The Chief Justice said, as the matter in dispute was a question of fact, their honours as a court of appeal would not interfere. Mr. Justice Barton agreed with this view and stated that he thought Mr. Justice Hood had ample grounds, after hearing evidence, for finding as he had done on questions of fact, and the appeal was dismissed with costs. On the 26th of October 1912 in the Sydney Sun, curious Victorian lawsuit. Judgment was given for William Carradus and his co-trustees in regards to the rents. In regard to the property, it was ordered that the trustees should pay £35 on account of repairs rendered necessary during their stewardship, and they were allowed £44, 18 shillings and 4 pence on their counterclaim. The plaintiff was ordered to pay the defendant his taxed costs of action and counterclaim, including costs of investigations. In all other matters, the parties must abide their own costs. It was decided that Catherine E. Shadwick had exercised an undoubted legal right. So in the end, the appeal went in Mr. Moore's favour. And so for her 3 sons, particularly her eldest son, it would have been a big blow considering that they were fostered out and in the end their mother didn't recognise them either in person or in law. Please tune into the bonus episode where it covers the 3 boys and what became of them, and in particular Harry Tipper, who proved to be a very interesting man.
If you are interested in sharing your story on my podcast Family History Mysteries, please go to my Facebook page and send me a message. If you would like some assistance in filling in the gaps in your family tree to see what mysteries you solve, please get in touch. And don't forget you can have early access to episodes by subscribing, and you'll also gain access to bonus episodes.